except that we have to talk about
Yeah.
you now.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and my guest today is Dr. Robert Berke. I heard last summer that you were preparing to do another Ironman athletic competition in November.
Is true. Tempe, Arizona. That didn't turn out the way I thought.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was fascinating. In July, everything was just right on, you know. And then I injured my foot. It was weird. I teach spin class, and I broke a toe stubbing it, going to help someone, so I couldn't run for a while. And that was okay. I knew I was going to have to ramp up in late August, September, October. And then I noticed that I was just really tired all the time, which training at that level, you know, 2, 3, 4 hours a day, at my age, I was getting tired, and my wife was noticing I was tired, but you know. And then I noticed my swim times were a little slower, and that I was just really tired.
Well, it was awfully hot and
But
muggy.
that wasn't the story, though.
No.
And so in September, the tour of Chautauqua, I needed to get some long bike rides in. I've been riding shorter rides, and I went up into the Arkwright Hills on that 75-mile ride, and I was out of gas. I mean, I was just really, I had a tough time of it, which was very unusual for me on the bike. On the flats, I was fine climbing. I was just out of gas. And then I went to Denver to visit my daughter. It was her birthday, and my son-in-law was going to Arizona with me, and we went. He's a top rider, and we were, you know, ultimately we swam, and I noticed my swim. I was really working hard, and altitude, you know, 6,000 feet, and then we went on a 78-mile bike ride at altitude, climbing a little bit, and I was just tired, but nothing else. Maybe a little breathless, you know, and got back late at night. And the next morning, 3,000-yard swim, and I was slow. I figured I'm tired. We got back at 2 in the morning. Next day, same thing, 3,000-yard swim, slow, and I'm starting, what's going on? And Saturday was like I'm now the big weekends, run, swim, next day, long bike. And the run was an hour and a half, and I was just not good. And then I went and swam, and my lane buddy, because we're swimming 2 to a lane with coach, kept saying to me, "What's wrong with you?" You're like, I was tired. And the next day I had set my bike up at home, not to go out on the road, to mimic the race course. There was 39 miles 3 times, 38 and a half miles 3 times. And so it was set up so the computer would also get my bike to mimic the hills, and it was a pretty flat course. And I was really cooking along, and I was thinking, oh, this is great. And about hour and a half in, suddenly, I got really dizzy and felt really not good. And of course, I finished my little set and got off and looked at my watch and said, boy, you know, 2 hours and 13 minutes. If I do it 3 times, that's 6 hours and 39 minutes. I'll have all this time for the run, but I just wasn't feeling so good. And we had dinner that night with my daughter, who's a physician, and she knows I had a little aortic stenosis. My aortic valve was a little tight from 2019. No big deal. And she said, you better go get an echocardiogram. And so my valve was 1.6 centimeters, which is, it'd been that way since 2019. 0.85 centimeters, 1/3 of an inch, this much. That's what my valve was going like this, that's all. I was done. That was it. Couldn't race, had to stop. Had a cardiac catheterization, which showed my arteries were clean, but my valve was that much. That's what I was pushing through instead of this much.
Oh.
And so December 16th, I had what's called a TAVR, a transarterial through your groin valve replacement at St. Vincent's, where they put in a little tiara. It just looks like a tiara that goes on the top of a Barbie doll, except it goes in, it looks like this, and then it springs open and it's like this. And the valve leaflets, which were just doing this, are being pushed open by this tiara in the middle. And now I've got a tiara in there.
Now you're back to being yourself.
And all I take is an aspirin and a vitamin. And I'm back to exercising, but I had to take a little time for a month afterwards. So I've just started exercising, ramping up again. And so I didn't go to, I went to Tempe because my son-in-law was racing. I would have been the oldest person in the race.
Oh.
And all I had to do was finish, and I would have won a spot to go to the World Championships at Kona. But I just stood there at the finish line, watched people finish. Well, I couldn't do anything. And that's okay.
But you're feeling better now?
I'm feeling, I'm
getting
just not in the kind of shape I'm usually in. And that's all, you know, but I was the healthiest person they were going to work on. I mean, everybody else, you know, has all kinds of, do you take any medicine? No. Have you had it? No. No. Are you on that? No. No. Well, why are you here? Because I'm tired and my valve is tight, you know. And that was it. And so they were very happy to be able to do that the way they did it with me, and that my arteries, you know, were all clean. There are minimal blockages, you know, for my age. So I'm signed up again. Ottawa, August the 2nd. We'll see. Because I was given a medical deferral, so I moved the race up, you know, registration to Ottawa, which is, it's only 6 hours from here, and it's, so we'll see. So that's my story.
Okay.
But I guess the moral is stay healthy, eat properly, exercise regularly. You don't have to train for the Olympics, just walk every day, do something every day, eat good quality food, you know, look after yourself. It pays off in the end.
Oh, yeah.
And I have parents that live very old. My mom made it to 102, my dad almost 90. All my relatives lived very old. I got a brother who's 5 years older than me, who's very healthy. So we're lucky. Genetically, I'm extremely lucky. But it doesn't mean you squander it by smoking a pack a day,
no,
drinking in excess, eating, whatever.
Not.
You know, you have to look after yourself. And I was very fortunate. But also, I had put in the work all along, you know, since my first marathon in 1976, Ottawa Marathon, you know. And I've just, and before that I was, you know, but running, you know, cycling, cross-country skiing, again, it makes me feel good, keeps me healthy. Anyway, that's the story.
Okay. You wanted to talk about some updates with the Scrambler.
Oh, the Scrambler. Well, we
office.
talked about this last time, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I see a lot of people with chronic pain and neuropathy. And neuropathy is the big deal. Post-chemotherapy neuropathy, or diabetic neuropathy, sciatica. And this fellow a neuroscientist in Italy in 2015 was looking at all the treatment modalities, TENS machines, stimulators. They all attempt to block the pain, but as soon as you turn them off, you got the pain. And he figured there's got to be a better way. And he was working with the concept called neuroplasticity, where your brain, no matter how old you are, you can train it to do new things. And you can always learn new things. And so he built this device, which is all computerized, but this big, you know. And I saw, I knew nothing about it, but I saw an article in the New England Journal of Medicine. If anybody wants to look at it, it's the July 2023 edition. You can go online and you can find it on just looking under Scrambler. And it's this device which works on an interesting principle. So let's say you've got a back injury, and you end up with sciatica, and it's down one part of your leg. And if you want to put up the dermatome chart, we can talk, because the dermatome chart is really an interesting.
You can bring up the chart.
Okay, so this chart shows the presentation of all the nerves out of your spinal cord. Each line is what is coming out of your spinal cord. Now, it's funny because the arms and legs are an anomaly. When we start as a fetus, or before, you start with a fertilized egg. And then you have it doubles, and then it doubles, and it doubles. And then you end up with a plate which folds on itself and forms a neural tube. It almost looks like the tube you would look at that toilet paper or tissue paper is wrapped in. And then out of that, the arms and legs get pulled. So that's why the nerve distribution in your arms and legs is a little different than what's across your chest. If you look across your chest, the nerves coming out of your back just go around, slightly on an angle downwards. Anyway, each of those nerves is like the telephone line to your house. So the telephone line to your house is the same line that's going further down the street, carrying internet and whatever else down the street to your neighbors and everything else. And when it comes to your house and turns into your house, it's got a very specific signal. In that signal are, again, internet, phone, whatever else. Well, what happens if the line to your house is damaged, but your neighbor's getting full, everything, so what's happening in your body if you have a back injury and let's say at lumbar 4, which you can see is the top of your thigh there, the front of your thigh, but you only have pain down to your knee. But if you look, lumbar 4 goes below your knee, and lumbar 5 all the way goes down, and if you look on the back to the sole of your foot. So there's something going on where the nerve has normal signal, and then it has some abnormal signal. Well, if you're thinking about the telephone line to your house, but your neighbor's getting a normal signal, but you're just not. So there's something wrong with that bit of the fiber that's coming to your house. So he figured, what happens if I latch onto the fiber where it's a normal signal? And I send that signal to your brain constantly for 43 minutes is what this machine does.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Day after day, like 1 or 2 or 3 days. So the study that was in the New England Journal of Medicine showed 1,086, I forget the exact number of patients at the Mayo Clinic and Johns Hopkins where they did this. One doctor was a diabetic specialist. The other was a cancer specialist. So they had people with numb feet, people with sore feet. And they also had people with sciatica, people with shingles pain, people with trigeminal neuralgia. 80% success rate in getting rid of the pain entirely, permanently. I looked at it, I said, this is amazing. And all it is 2 electrodes on your skin. They give you a little tingle and so you find an area on, let's say, lumbar 4. And it's only, or lumbar 5, and it's only your foot that's bothering you. So you go up your leg a little bit to the outside of your calf where it's normal, and you put a sticker on there and one on the back at lumbar 5, and you turn the machine on. And it puts a little tingle in for 43 minutes. And if it works, the patient will tell you almost within 10 minutes, it's gone. After one treatment, it comes back. It lasts 3, 4, 5 hours, whatever else. After 2 treatments, it may be half the day, or the whole thing is gone. And once it's gone, that's it, you're done. That's it. So we've treated about 150 people so far over the year and a half, about 80% success rate. You can't use it on people taking nerve blockers, gabapentin, duloxetine, pregabalin, Lyrica. They interfere with it. But it's pretty successful. And it's totally amazing. And so we rented this machine. We just bought a machine for our office in Jamestown because it really works. And for people with chronic sciatica, it will only work on nerve pain. If you have arthritic pain, like my hands from all my sports and everything are arthritic, it does nothing. But for nerve pain, it works. It even treats some of the more complex nerve problems. Trigeminal neuralgia used to be the suicide pain. Right here, you have, if you put your finger up here, you feel a little hole. The trigeminal nerve comes out here, and people get up a little higher, you feel a little hole in your bone up there if you go up. There's a little nerve root that comes out through there, and people get pain in there that is, they commit suicide with it. It used to be very common. Wow. And there's no treatment for it that works very well. Mm-hmm. This works. And I had a woman I treated 2 treatments. And she came back, I said, how are you doing? She says, it's gone. I said, you're done. She started crying. She'd been lying there every night with this bang, bang, bang right there. So it does work. Now, is it perfect? No. But that's the end of the story. So we, unfortunately, we have to charge a little something for it because I rent the machine. So,
Right, right.
So we charge, right, what I do now for most people is I say, come in, we'll give you just a treatment for, we'll just charge your insurance for the visit, we won't charge you anything, just to see if you get a response. If you get a response, then we know it's going to work. And then they have to decide. Most of them have been everywhere, done everything. They're just tired of chronically being in pain, and it has to be nerve pain. It cannot be just arthritic pain, but it works. And so we're really excited. Cleveland Clinic has these machines. The military uses them at Walter Reed. When I first got this machine, there were about 70 around the nation. Now there's some more. But I saw someone from Columbus, Ohio the other day. They find us on the internet and come in. We saw someone from Rochester who came every day. She had complex regional pain, which is a terrible injury. Some people get just with a little sprain and then they get this terrible pain and you can't touch it. Why people get it, we don't know. Those take 8 or 9 treatments. But she came, she couldn't even put a sock on her foot, walking with a cane. She was 30 years old.
Oh, really? Only 30?
She drove every day from Rochester. When she left, had her cane over her shoulder, sneaker on her foot, smiling, walking out the door. For us, I love it because you're doing something for someone, which is making a huge change in their life. Anyway, that's the story. So.
Oh, okay.
So let's go on and talk about immunization. I want to talk about that story.
Yes, I really wanted to bring that up because there's a lot of different things
going on.
And
yes. Well, let me first preface this all, okay? Science, okay? This is what the problem we're having at the moment is. There's a lot of mistrust of science. And because of the ability of people to go on other sources of information, Google, internet, all these other ancillary sources, they get all kinds of information that may or may not be valid. Science is a very simple process. It is experimentation. People have an idea, they then attempt to prove or disprove it. And what you end up doing is trying to disprove it. And the classic example is Louis Pasteur. Before Louis Pasteur, which is like now 175 years ago, people were drinking raw milk and a lot of people were getting sick and dying or whatever else. And Pasteur realized that there was a problem. And for many years he looked at this and experimented, and he figured out that if you heat milk up to a certain temperature for a certain amount of time, you kill the bacteria, and that's it. That's science. And so you know what's on his tombstone?
Gosh, I don't know.
If you don't succeed, try again. And that's what science is. It's postulating something, but the science has to be, I've studied epidemiology and the excruciating detail that you go into to try and identify bias that would make the finding invalid. You can't imagine how intense the scrutiny is of all the studies that come out to look at, is there some other reason why you got this result? And so the best example of very poor science, which has really caused a lot of trouble, is the paper by a British doctor who came out saying that autism was caused by measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. And this created MMR. And this created a complete story in the news. Jenny McCarthy here with her child who had autism, blaming the vaccine, and because it happened, he was I forget the exact story, but in the end he was discredited. His science was garbage. The Danes had published a study on 800,000 children studied. There were more cases of autism in kids unvaccinated than there were in vaccinated kids. And the studies have been over and over again. The same thing now with Tylenol and the cause of autism, which is all nonsense. The studies have been done that are, show, and these are really, really rigorous studies. And yet, we have this skepticism about vaccines because once it starts and, vaccine science is much like the rest of science. You try again. The early vaccines were very primitive. A smallpox vaccine originally with cowpox and, again. And then when you and I were vaccinated, the vaccines were pretty rough, especially the whooping cough vaccine. It was caused, 3 in a million kids got brain damaged from the impurities, the debris in the vaccine. Then there was mercury solvents in the vaccine that they saw, And so over the years, science has looked at and purified them and made them much more. They are today some of the most incredible tools we have. And yet the skepticism is there.
Yeah.
And well, let me finish because
Okay.
One of my friends who I just left, who was a swimmer, almost died with fever of 107 because her parents didn't immunize her against measles vaccine.
Oh.
This was a long time ago, but I played football in college in Canada, and I remember one year this young man, Andy Charters, his parents were Seventh-day Adventists, and he was unvaccinated. He was a beautiful young guy, 5'11", 180-pound football player, a beautiful blonde kid going, in the School of Commerce, whatever else. In between our second and third year of playing, he went off to Central America on a missionary, came back on crutches, paralyzed from the waist down because he got polio. So what do I read yesterday? The new chairperson of the new Vaccine Advisory Committee is advising against immunizing children against polio. Mm-hmm. I've seen polio when I was in Africa. It is, and Andy, of course, but it is, and we see people here who got polio and have a withered leg from 50, 60, 70 years ago before vaccine that I remember standing in line to get as a kid, when it first came out.
Right.
And about 20 years ago, we had only about 60 or 80 cases of polio in the world. It was about to be eradicated. And then some crazies in northern Waziristan and northern Nigeria decided that these vaccines were being used to give HIV to, and suddenly we let the genie out again, and now and the cases started to fulminate again. And now what are we seeing? We're seeing cases of measles, and now in South Carolina they're doubling weekly because of what the people who are vaccine hesitant at the moment don't understand is that they're blessed, lucky, that the rest of the world around them is vaccinated in the community they're in. And this protects you with herd immunity, except when that percentage of vaccinated people starts to go down. And we know exactly the number it takes to allow propagation of the disease. And now in a lot of places in the United States, measles vaccination, because of this erroneous study, false study in England, propagated by people who had a platform like Jenny McCarthy, have created vaccine skeptics. And now the herd immunity for measles in many communities has dropped below the level at which propagation, because measles is the most infectious disease we know, can spread. And that's what we're seeing in Texas, now in South Carolina. And you don't want to vaccinate your kid, that's your choice, but you understand that at a certain point, your child is no longer going to be a child, it's going to be an adult. And they're going to go to other parts of the world, they're going to travel, they're going to do whatever. So we vaccinate all our kids against tetanus. Why? There's no tetanus around. Well, there's tetanus everywhere. The spores are in the soil, in manure, everywhere for 1,000 years. And they're sitting there dormant, and it's not a rusty nail. Everybody thinks, oh, you step on a rusty nail. Step on anything that penetrates your skin deep enough that the skin closes over it. The spore, in an environment where there's no oxygen, becomes a bacteria again. Starts secreting the second most lethal toxin we know, tetanus toxin. It binds with the junction of the nerve and the muscle, and that muscle fires continuously So you end up with just your heels and the back of your head touching the ground like this till you die of exhaustion. There's no treatment. I mean, the treatment is to put you in a coma and wait till that finishes and give you penicillin to kill the bacteria. But once it starts, you're in an ICU for 30 days, comatose, intubated, a couple $1 million worth of treatment to try and save you. Yeah, that's what's...
Okay, so this is tetanus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about? I've seen it all overseas. I saw people die of tetanus. I saw kids with polio. I saw kids with measles. Measles, by the way, 1 in 1,000 kids dies who gets measles. And then a certain other percentage ends up brain damage with pansclerosing encephalitis, which is a lifelong condition that parents will then have a child who is brain damaged for life. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that they had a measles vaccination when we were little kids because
1957 was the
because
first.
I was in
I had measles.
I
got
was in
measles.
I was in third
Yes.
grade when we got that really worst kind of measles.
Yeah.
There was a couple different kinds. But it seems like everybody got it, and I don't remember there being any vaccinations.
No, there wasn't until 1957.
Okay.
And you were probably past third grade in 1957.
I think, well, I don't know.
Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm just joking when I say that. But yeah, the other one, though, that no one talks about in there, mumps and rubella, the other two things. Rubella was a nasty virus that for most people was nothing. For pregnant women, it meant you, in the first trimester, you ended up with a child deaf, blind, mentally deficient, and whatever else. And this is why we immunize against rubella, because it's an innocuous disease. I mean, you get a little rash and everything else. But if you're in the first trimester of pregnancy, not good. Mumps, yeah, except if you're a male and you want to have children, you may not be able to. You may become infertile because it causes orchitis and you can end up with, infertility. So this is why we use these vaccines. Now, for sure, the majority of people who get these illnesses, no big deal. I had measles. I remember lying under the covers because my eyes hurt reading War and Peace. I remember reading the whole book under the covers with a flashlight because my eyes hurt.
Yeah,
but it's still.
I remember the shades in
Of course,
the house
because your eyes really were sore.
Had to be pulled. Yeah.
Yes. But 1 in 1,000 kids dies. And we saw a child died in Texas of measles. And then a certain other percentage end up with this pansclerosing encephalitis, which is a lifelong damage to the brain and, a child who never gets a chance to live a normal life. But anyway, the whole thing has to do with science and your trust or your distrust in science. And the problem is science isn't perfect. We keep finding that there are other things. Shakespeare wrote, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio. Yeah, you just, you think you got it, and then you realize it's not exactly that.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's what science keeps doing. And I think people have this belief that, they've discovered it and it's done. It's never done. You're always finding little, and it's unfortunate because if you look at the most amazing thing in science was 1 year to develop the mRNA vaccine for COVID. 1 year it took. Most of the vaccines take lifetime. This was 1 year. And yet people are very skeptical of it.
Well, a lot of people, after we started getting the COVID vaccines, a lot of people would tell me that they hadn't gotten it because it's too soon.
So let me tell you about that. If you want to look at the data across the United States, okay, the states where COVID vaccination rates were the lowest had the highest mortality rates in the diabetics, all the people at high risk. So, yeah, is it a perfect vaccine? No. because this virus keeps, much like the flu vaccine, the virus keeps mutating, and it's really hard, except this vaccine, they're able to change it very quickly because it's a manufactured vaccine as opposed to the flu vaccine where they have to culture it, and that's always a problem. But again, it's science. What they did was they had a novel virus. They, in a light speed, created a vaccine that could protect you somewhat. And the places where there was the highest vaccine hesitancy had the highest mortality rates. Okay, you choose what you want to do in life. It's the hardest thing I'm finding right now is spending more and more time talking to parents who are vaccine skeptic. And they're vaccine skeptic for reasons which are, hard to understand. I understand they have a beautiful child and they don't want anything wrong, to go wrong with them. These vaccines are for the most part, have been, amazing research gone into them. And yet, so people come in to see me with a shopping bag full of vitamins. They bring them into your office? Oh, sure, because we ask them to bring in all their meds. And it's just a shopping bag full of stuff. What's the science? But there is no science, by the way. There's never been any significant study done on any of these vitamins, and a $20 billion industry. Now, if you're vitamin deficient in a certain area, yeah, it's not a bad idea. Most people, it's the fish in the lake are getting most of it, and it's really, except, so here's science again. Recently, and if you notice recently, the multivitamins are starting to talk about cognitive decline.
Yeah.
Why? Because Harvard, a few years ago, has one of their research areas was looking at a lot of these alternative medicines, and what they were looking at was bioflavonoids, chocolate compounds, and heart disease. Yeah, chocolate compounds for heart disease. Because again, this was being purported, no science, but being purported out there. So they did a study, huge study. I mean, 2,500 people per. That's good study, okay? Useless, doesn't work. But what they found in one side of the study was people taking one multivitamin a day over the age of 60, 65 had less cognitive decline.
With just a multivitamin.
Just a single multivitamin. So suddenly you now have some science showing. Now again, they're now looking at that because was it biased? They have to now look at equal number of males and females, same age. Were they all the biasing things? But still, there was a little science to show that might be some beneficial effect. That's how things start, and then you look at that, and now they may come out and say, "We looked, and when we really studied it, it didn't go." So again, science. Have you been watching? You watch a little bit of television. You see these ads for medications for your brain.
Well, we don't actually.
Okay, well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you about this because I want to tell you about science. Okay.
Okay.
Because I see people all the time who buy this stuff. Prevagen for your brain. Made with something from jellyfish and a cognitive And if you look quickly underneath, in a study done on 129 normal or near normal people, that's not a study. That's not science. That's garbage. $2 a pill, and I have people bring in every day. What do you think of this? I bought this because, and it's advertising. It's just garbage. So, if you're going to look at science, you have to look at the methodology and how rigorous the studies are, and because it's really important. And the vaccines have had, incredible research done into, their effectiveness. Not only that, the risks and benefits, side effects, everything else. And look, I'm a proponent of it only because I've lived in places where vaccines were not readily available, and I've seen the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And here we're very fortunate, and most of the people walking around who think they can have their child unimmunized are still very fortunate that the rest of the world around them is immunized.
Mm-hmm.
But that's starting to fall away a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're seeing is a lot of doctors' offices refuse to have these children come into the office because they are at risk of bringing something in.
Yeah. Well, how common is it the hepatitis B virus that
that story.
they're talking
Yeah,
about?
I
now?
understand. Okay.
That apparently people for a long time now, babies have been getting vaccinated
Right, at
against
birth,
it the
at
day
birth.
they're born.
Right.
Okay.
So you want to talk
So-
about hepatitis B? It is a lethal disease, okay? If you get hepatitis, first of all, hepatitis A, there's a vaccine against. It's the childhood disease. You see it in in places where sanitation isn't so great. No one dies from it. They just wish they did because they feel awful, and it can be transmitted by food handlers, okay? And that's why you see these outbreaks. And there was one, when I first moved here, one of the Quality Market in Jamestown, there was an outbreak of a food handler. And then the Taco Hut had one. I mean, they were, but hepatitis C, which is a different, hepatitis C is sexually transmitted and transmitted through IV drug use. Hepatitis B is sexually transmitted. It is it causes, if you're infected with it, it can lead to cirrhosis, liver failure, and liver cancer, okay? It is a very, very nasty virus. The vaccine actually is not a true viral vaccine. They took a benign bacteria, sliced off a bit of the genetic sequence off the surface of the hepatitis B vaccine, embedded it in the bacteria, and that's the vaccine you get. And that's just enough genetic material that you can develop immunity against hepatitis B. It was a genius figuring out how to do that. So they use a benign bacteria, a coliform bacteria, which causes no trouble, and it's killed, but on its surface is this little sequence of genetic program that tells your body that it's hepatitis B, even though it isn't the virus. And they were so worried it's such a nasty virus that they didn't want to try and either attenuate it or kill it, or they just did that. And so that's the vaccine science, okay? So why they gave it to firstborns is because it's transmitted across the placenta. And yes, we test every mother to see if they have hepatitis B, but they're tested once and pregnant. They can then get infected and pass it along. And so they had projected that they saved X number, 1,000 kids from getting hepatitis B by using this. And now the other side of it is, well, we're testing every pregnant woman against it. Why do we even care? Well, are you testing them the day they deliver? Are you testing them? How close to delivery are you testing them? So the safer thing is to give this benign, it has really no harmful effect to the child, and it protects them. So that's the whole story there, okay?
Okay.
And I'm not sure why it has caused such a furor, but I understand why it has caused a furor, because we've got a Secretary of Health who is an anti-vaxxer, basically, and he's put a whole committee together of these people. And it's really too bad, because vaccines have a place in modern science and modern medicine. And it's created a tremendous amount of uncertainty out there, and it has created a lot more work for people like me who have to sit there and try and discuss this with parents. And we discuss vaccines with but now to try and convince someone to even vaccinate their child it's most of the medical community is tearing their hair out with this because it's just making our work that much more difficult over something that has been miraculous.
How long, how many years has it been in use then?
Oh, a long time. It's been in use for 15 or 20 years at least. And it is completely innocuous. But people don't like the idea of their first day old newborn getting a shot, you know. And then, of course, what's happened also is they've tried to put all the shots together if possible, so you cut down the number of shots kids are getting. So you have these quadrivalent and hexavalent vaccines that have 5 or 6 or 7 different things in them that the kid gets all at one time, and people are upset about that. Your child's being bombarded with all kinds of innocuous stuff all day in your house that their immune system is responding to. Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, okay. I kind of like to ask, now you hear a lot about something called sepsis these days.
Yeah, yeah. Sepsis has been recognized for a long time, okay? And sepsis is an interesting condition that happens for reasons that are not all that known in sometimes healthy people who get an infection and the bacteria somehow evades the immune response that you normally have.
So
and
it's a bacterial infection.
Yeah. And
Okay.
overwhelms the body. And once it starts, it creates a cascade of organ failure because these are toxic substances that the bacteria is putting out. And once you reach a certain point, it's gangrene, organ failure, and death within 24, 46, 48 hours. And so now every emergency room worth its salt, and they all have tests to look at the subtle indicators, and there are a list of indicators that you look at for sepsis. And the way to counteract it, of course, is fluids and antibiotics immediately. And I mean, you have to be on high alert if you feel that this is the beginning of the sepsis cascade, because if you get down the road on it, past a certain point, you end up with horrible injuries that may not be lethal, but they limb loss, organ failure. It is really bad.
Yeah, I remember one day back when I was taking care of my mother when she was still alive. She and I wanted to watch that Dr. Oz show that day because he was going to be telling how you could tell if you were noticing the beginning symptoms of sepsis, I think it was, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was thinking this is something that we really need to know about. Well, wouldn't you know it, the Boston Marathon bombing just happened to happen at that time. So we didn't get to watch it, but I wonder, what are the early symptoms? They say you could confuse it for having the flu.
Well, you can confuse it for almost anything, except you're usually starting to be sicker than you should be with what you
Think you might have.
That's right. So let's say what's common, urinary tract infections are very common. But if you have a urinary tract infection and suddenly you've got a fever and you're feeling maybe, really unwell, maybe a little confused. Yeah, you're starting to have more than just a little burning when you urinate, a little backache or something. Yeah, you can't fool around with some of this stuff because it's just the you know, it's amazing how quickly this can happen. And it's not that common, but it's more common than we think. And there's been a big effort internationally to recognize sepsis earlier in the emergency room or in the hospital setting or in the physician's office setting, because early intervention is what saves the day. And even if you think it, you do something about it. Mm-hmm. And there are markers, you know, elevated white count, fever, certain blood tests. You know that things are maybe heading in that direction. And lactate levels. I mean, there are 4 or 5 things that you look at. And if they're starting to look like you really have to aggressively deal with it. Or, you know, a patient can really have some unfortunate outcomes. Yeah. It's very, very, yeah.
Well, it's not the kind of thing where you see a line of blood or a line of redness.
Well, that's septicemia.
Septicemia.
That's septicemia. That's a very similar process, but it's an early. So you get a cut on your skin and you get a big red area there, but it's well contained. That means your body has sent all the troops down, and the bacteria is the type of bacteria that doesn't produce the right kind of
immune?
No, the bacteria itself doesn't produce the right kind of aggressive enzymes to get past your body. So staph, for example, always causes boils.
Oh, okay.
Strep, and you see this streak coming up your arm. Yeah, that is the beginning of septicemia. Mm-hmm. And basically, often you'll see it and you treat it. But if that gets into your bloodstream, then you're starting to, then you can ultimately seed, you know, your heart valves, your kidneys, and start to have organ failure for sure. And so bacteria have different qualities, you know, and they have different propensities. Some of them are very nasty, and some of them are, you know, your body handles them fairly well. The ancient Greeks knew if you had an abscess, the treatment was to evacuate the abscess. Your body had walled it off, but now you got this little pocket of pus that you have to open and drain, either with a salt or with a knife or whatever else. But that's a different story when you see the streaks, and that was often the cause of death for surgeons, midwives who would nick themselves, you know, in the very, very, and there was no antibiotic at the time. It was a long time ago. This is one of the Canadian. I was born there. The Canadian physician, Dr. Norman Bethune, was the developed field transfusion. This was not being done before. He was left-wing, communist-leaning, and went over to fight with the revolutionaries in Spain against Franco, and developed transfusion services for the battle victims. Then went to China to fight with Mao's troops against the communists, against Chiang Kai-shek's people, and in operating on someone, nicked himself and died of septicemia, because it was 1937. There were no antibiotics or anything that would deal with that. And so, it's one of those things, you know, that happens. And of course, now we're worried when you nick yourself, have you transmitted HIV to yourself, or hepatitis, or whatever else, because those are portals of entry for sure.
Well, I remember back at the end of June, and you were the medical professional who saw me. I had an infection. You know, it gradually had a whole bunch of symptoms, and you told me I had erysipelas. And prescribed an antibiotic
Yes.
for me. I know one of it had really weird symptoms. Like my dreams were more like hallucinations than dreams, and
Right.
I'd wake up from them and be looking for something that didn't exist.
But-
But the main thing, the weird thing was, the lids of my left eye got swollen and red.
Yeah, and often you see it here,
Right.
and the skin is heaped up like it's leonine or lion-like, and there's a very distinct border to it. It's almost as if you're going along, and suddenly there's a ridge to it. Yeah, it's quite an interesting, and it's a strep infection of the skin, and it's.
But it made me feel sick all
Oh,
over.
yes.
I
Well,
mean, I think that was the sickest I ever felt
Yes,
in
of
my
course,
entire
of
life.
course. Well, again, strep
Yeah.
has streptodornase, streptokinase. These are enzymes that get through your system, get through your defense mechanism, and can that's why you get the streaking. Yeah.
Well, I remember the printed information you gave me about it said that if it's not treated, it can turn into meningitis.
Oh well, it can turn into all kinds of things because it gets into your bloodstream, and you can get really sick. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's
yeah, it was when my husband saw that my eyelids were swollen. He said, "You'd better get right on the phone and call a doctor's office."
But we're seeing kind of interesting things now. There's malaria in Florida, indigenous malaria. It used to be imported cases, people were coming back. Dengue, chikungunya. These are Zika. We haven't seen much news about Zika because first of all, the climate is warming. The vectors, which are mosquito, are moving. Look what we're dealing with tick-borne.
Oh, yeah.
Fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
Fascinating. So, 10 years ago, ticks, you look for Lyme disease, which was another interesting story because for years they had people in Lyme, Connecticut who had all kinds of arthritis and no one knew what it was until someone figured out that it was tick-borne, spirochete that was causing it. Well, now we looked at all the ticks here. We never had, we used to have someone come down from the state health department and only 1% of the ticks were infected. And it was really, now all the ticks are infected. And they're not only infected with Lyme disease. They're infected with anaplasmosis, Borrelia, ehrlichiosis, and Lyme disease. So when someone is got a tick on them and they have a rash or they've had the tick on them for a few days, they should be tested. There's a panel you look at. You don't just look for Lyme disease. You look for there's a panel you can look for.
Well, do
And
you test just the tick or the
No,
tick?
the person.
The person.
Yeah,
okay.
don't bother with it. They're all infected. So if the person's had the tick on them for just a few minutes, you don't worry about it. But if they've had, but you can't just treat them for Lyme because one of them, Babesia, you need to treat them with an anti-malarial.
Oh.
Yeah, and a certain number of these people are not only infected with Lyme, but they're infected with Babesia. And you treat the Lyme and they're still not well, and you look and they've got this. Yeah, it's a changing world out there. As the climate changes a little bit now, it doesn't look like it out there today, but it's been a lot warmer, and these parasites are moving, vectors are moving north. Rocky Mountain spotted fever, it's only transmitted, thought to be by a tick called it's Dermacenter andersoni, the hourglass on its back, I think it is. And someone saw one here last summer.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it's just, first of all, animals are migrating, and so deer, and raccoon, whatever it is, yeah. It's a changing world out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. It's as long as we understand what's going on, we're fine. But
well, I've heard a certain amount of veterinarians say that for some reason, I don't know what it would be, cats seem to be somewhat immune. They don't get very sick from tick-borne diseases for some reason. I don't know why they would be different from the rest of us.
I don't know, because obviously certain animals don't seem to. Deer don't do very well with the ticks.
Don't they? They get really sick, do they?
Yeah, if they're loaded up, they don't do very well, because the tick are feeding on blood and everything else. Hey, as I told you earlier, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy. We still have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating how much is still out there that we don't know about.
Yeah, I know we keep hearing about diseases we've never heard about before. So.
It's, some of them had to do with the way we lived. So tuberculosis, crowding, and the transmission, which is an aerosol transmission. The way people live these days, it's uncommon, except in areas where you see homeless or people congregating, in poor sanitary conditions. All you need is one case coughing out, and you end up with people with TB, and we still see it. Meningitis. There's another story. We immunize every kid, or we try to, going off to college, going off to the military, going off to congregate settings, because that's how meningitis is spread. And that is a nasty condition if you get it, lethal sometimes. And so, again, there are situations which create the opportunity for the spread of these diseases, and there are conditions which prevent the spread, being outside in fresh air and everything else. That's why we don't see much flu in the summer, head colds in the summer, whatever, because it's, people are more outdoors. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I hate to say it.
We've killed another hour. I
we've
understand
come to the
that.
end of another episode of Fresh Perspectives, and I'm so grateful to you for agreeing to be on
my pleasure.
And talk
My
about
pleasure.
these things today. There's so many. I keep coming up with more and more ideas for things I could ask you about, so I'll have to get you scheduled again sometime in the not too distant future, like maybe in the spring.
Maybe after August the 2nd. Okay?
After August.
I got a busy itinerary up to then.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, all kinds of things to talk about. We could talk about water and sewage. There's an idea.
Oh, yeah.
There's a concept that can really go in cornerstone of public health.
Oh, yeah.
Good water, good sewage.
I'll see those of you in the viewing audience when I do the next episode.